it is news to many that the United Nations even has an Office for Outer Space Affairs, which is in fact responsible for promoting international cooperation in the peaceful uses of outer space. Joining me now is author and journalist Nick Pope, who used to run the British government's UFO project at the Ministry of Defence. Thanks so much for joining us. I presume you thought this story was ridiculous from the start.
Well, it's half true, you know. The Royal Society had a discussion meeting earlier this year called The Detection of Extraterrestrial Life and the Consequences for Science and Society. And one of the questions asked was, who speaks for planet Earth? And Dr. Othman simply said, well, look, maybe the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs should have a role in that.
Which would mean her.
It would mean her. So I think what was an intriguing possibility in the mind's eye of the media became a certainty. But scientists are thinking about these sorts of issues. If we pick up a signal, do we reply? If we reply, what should we say?
Who replies?
Well, people are looking for signals using radio telescopes. Yes. If we find one of the big issues, and Stephen Hawking has talked about this recently...
The Cambridge professor.
Absolutely, has said, well, maybe we shouldn't reply at all, because look what happened when the European explorers encountered the Native Americans. Didn't come off too well for the Native Americans. But all these issues now, the scientific community are beginning to think about this, and I think that's interesting.
And is the information, the research coordinated in a way that if a signal did come through, you'd all be discussing it, and you would perhaps put together some sort of response and decide who it would be? Is there any sort of setup or any committee of any kind?
Well, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence have something called the Declaration Protocols, which is really more about verification than anything else. But these issues, these next step issues, should we reply, what should we say? The Royal Society are going to be discussing that at their meeting next week, which I'm going to be attending.
OK, and just to give us a bit more background about your experience in this, you were in charge of all of this, effectively, for the British government. You came to the conclusion, eventually, from an impartial point of view, that there are UFOs likely to come or have come?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm convinced...
You couldn't write off some of the examples?
I couldn't write... Exactly. The politician's answer. I'm convinced there's life out there. Not sure if we're being visited, but some of the UFO sightings that we investigated, we couldn't explain in conventional terms. OK, and so... if you had enough resources at the time, how much more would you have researched that, and what do you think your conclusion might have been? Well, I don't think there's a manager anywhere in the civil service who wouldn't say, please, can I have more resources if available. I would have liked to have obviously hooked up much more with the astronomical community. And it's interesting, the Royal Society, when it's discussing this, brings together a multidisciplinary group of physicists, cosmologists, but even theologians, social scientists. People are talking about the religious implications of this even.
OK, so when the Royal Society does meet and discuss it a bit further, do you think there is a will within the scientific, theological communities, as it were, to have some sort of representative? It would be the UN, wouldn't it?
It probably would have to be the UN. I don't think it could be a political leader. It couldn't be a religious figure. It would have to be someone who could genuinely say, I speak for the people of this planet. And the UN is probably it, which is where we come back to Dr. Othman, and maybe she is the right choice after all.
Who's fighting it? There must be someone fighting it. This is politics after all.
Well, I don't know. Maybe one of her colleagues was a little bit over-enthusiastic about translating this speculation that the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs might have a role into a certainty. I don't know.
Promoting the department. Thank you very much. Thanks very much. That's great.